So I guess we'll get started now. Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline O'Keefe, and I'm the president of the Women's Entrepreneurship Network. I want to thank you all for coming today, and especially our panelists for participating in today's event. I'd like to pass it over now to Beth as she can get started with some questions. Oh,
Hi.
sorry. I forgot. Here, my computer is not working. Of course. There we are. So first, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. Today, we have Andrea and Laura from Love House Events. I'm sorry, my computer is giving me troubles. We have Carrie Slade from Slade Unlimited, Jordan Pietrofida from Earthly for the Planet, and Annie Tambro from B&A Global Connections. And now I'd like to pass it over to Beth for our questions.
Hi, everyone. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Beth Whitehead. I'm the director of programming for WEN, and I'm going to be running our Q&A with our panelists today. We're super excited to hear about their experiences as entrepreneurs, and we're so glad that they were able to join us today to celebrate Women's Entrepreneurship Day, which is tomorrow. After the Q&A, I think that we're going to have time to open it up to questions from anyone else who wants to ask something. So you can also just put them in the chat as we are going along, and I'll make sure to go back through the chat when we open up for questions, and I can read those out. All right. So first, it might be a little difficult to kind of figure out who's going to talk first. We do have a lot of speakers here, but we'll work through it. Could each of you please just give us a brief description of what you do today as an entrepreneur?
Well, do you want me to start?
Sure, Annie, go ahead.
All right. Okay, I'm Annie Tamburo, and currently I run a small consulting company where I help startups and small businesses with sales and business development efforts. So, why am I here today is I've been part of a few startups. I have done some projects with them. I have worked with corporations as well. But I realized when I was working with a few startups that a few of the CEOs and the companies were coming to me for some advice on sales and BD work. And that's where I realized that there's actually a market for that. So I am a mom, so it helps me, get the flexibility to work on my own hours. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome, thank you. Love House, if you want to go next. Or Love House, am I even saying it right?
It's Love House. Love House. I know, it's Love House. We are an event planning and design company. Mainly we work with weddings. We also will do small scale and large scale events. We do full planning, partial planning, day of coordination, design, and production. So basically, Laura's been in the event planning world for 15 years. I was in the design world for about 15 years, and we brought both of our loves together and kind of just created this one house of love. So that's what we're doing at the moment. And we are also moms as well. So it does give us some flexibility that we need, and also allows us to be creative and do things outright. So, which is something that we both need to do.
Jordan, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Jordan Pietrofida. I think I might be the youngest speaker. I just graduated from Penn State in May, so I'm 22. I started Earthly for the Planet, which is a diverse, inclusive, and sustainable clothing brand that makes items just from secondhand materials. So it actually started as a research project for my senior honors thesis at Penn State. And then after graduation, in the midst of looking for full-time jobs and not finding any, I had this really strong inkling that I wanted to make Earthly a real thing and take my research from my thesis and turn it into a real brand. So that's kind of where I am today, making my own clothes out of secondhand materials and selling them.
And then Carrie, please.
Great. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. Those of you may know, I'm actually a professor at Temple. I teach in the business school. So I'll be representing kind of like the side business, the side hustle aspect of it. So I've had an interesting career going from law, then going back to getting my MBA, starting my business called Slate Unlimited. And that really stemmed from a problem seeing a lot of people where I had worked in Malawi and East Africa before law school, and seeing a lot of people not able to support themselves, a lot of talent and products, but not a lot of market. So we import African fashion accessories like bags, purses, belts, earrings, to try to pay fair prices and create sustainable employment opportunities, and also bring like cool fashion to the United States.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We're really excited to get to know more about you all. The next question is, have you always known that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or did you have that realization later in your professional career? I know some of you have already touched on a pivot that you made. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I guess it comes to me first. I'll go first. No, I was not an entrepreneur. Life happened, and I realized that startup is where I want to be. Just to give a brief description, because I could just sit here and write a whole story on how it started. I started really late in my career. And my story is of a typical immigrant coming into USA and what you call it as the American dream, where I did not have a work permit. And so I volunteered because I wanted to do something. I volunteered at hospitals, volunteered at TV stations. And when I got my work permit, I was about 25, 26 years old. And I realized that I am now jobless with no experience in USA. And I'm a single mom. So I took the leap of faith and started to call around the hotels that were around me. And I was called that day, and I was fortunately hired on the first interview. So I started to work with corporations. I work with some of the Fortune 500 companies like Xerox and Marriott, Fairmont, some of the other smaller corporations. So I had that experience, but then all of a sudden I was asked to be the head of business development for a Carnegie Mellon spinoff. It's an AI technology. And I joined them, and I think that have been a life-changing experience for me. I was already helping some of the startups with smaller projects, but this was a challenge. This was a challenge for sure. We started with 2 beta customers, and within a year, we were able to close about $500,000 in sales, and with actually $1 million in pipeline. And that resulted in the hockey sales trajectory, which resulted in about $14 million of funding for the company. Now, I'm not with the company anymore, but I am an equity holder, and I have mentored a couple of younger women within that company, and I still do. And that's where I felt like I'm passionate about startups, and now I'm more passionate about helping the woman in the startup world. So yeah, I feel like today I'm an entrepreneur. I wasn't before, but it changes.
Thank you. Lovehouse, do you want to tell us about your experiences?
So for me, I'd say like yes and no, because, just looking back from when I first started working, like working was never something that myself or even Laura was afraid of. Laura and I have known each other since we were 12, and most of our jobs that we've had have been together. So So I started working when I was 13, and I think I've always had more than one job. So it was just always going. Even through college, my thesis year, I was working at an architecture firm, working at Maxey's, and then working at a bar in Old City. So like,
We also worked at a coffee shop on campus that's not there anymore. But like we would go out and then see everyone from the night before at 7 a.m.
And
we
we'd
would
be
be there at
working.
7 a.m. But they would all come at 10 for class, and we would be like, "Hey, we were here at 6:30." But go ahead.
so just, I mean, in general, the work ethic was there. But ultimately, as I've gotten older and I started a family, and same with Laura, you know, I know for myself, I wanted to take all of that energy that I've always put in working for other people and put that energy in for myself and create something for myself, and we can have our own schedules. And that's really what's important, is to just kind of, you know, we're getting paid for and we're doing something that we love to do. And I get to do it with my best friends. So I've always worked for people, but I think I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit within me. So it's like, finally, we're letting her out.
Yeah, I think with me, I was always creative. I was always very detail oriented, but I went to school for TV production and communications. So I was always interested in, you know, the mass media aspect of my major. And now that's transitioned into social media and things like that. But, you know, I didn't think this would be my path. I didn't think entrepreneurship would be my path. I thought I was going to work in New York and be a producer. But now, you know, things happened in my life and that didn't happen. And I'll touch on that in another question. But yeah, that never was something that I aspired to. But when I was working for someone else, being the creative person on the team, and then everyone else kind of, you know, the owner of the company reaping the benefits, I was like, why don't I just do this for myself and have the work flex and be in charge of what I'm doing, not catering to someone else's idea of what I should be doing.
I also think, like, for both of us, we both come from like a similar background. Like, I come from military background, mother of an immigrant, like that, like being an entrepreneur, like that's not something that's normal. Like, I needed to go to college and work for somebody. So like, you know, even now, you know, we'll touch on that in another question that you asked about family and stuff, but I feel like we get to let that person out that was in us. But like, both of our fathers would be like, no, you get jobs.
You work at the same place,
yes, for 50 years.
50 years, and then you die. Like, that was what they thought work was.
I'm really excited to hear what more you have to say in our other questions. Jordan, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So at first, when I was thinking about this question, I was going to say, no, I never thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur. And then I thought about it a little bit more, and I had a photography side hustle while I was in college. So I think I should have realized the fact that I enjoyed that so much and I have that photography experience probably meant that I was going to end up being my own boss at some point, because I like being my own boss and being in charge and like doing what I want to do. But I guess specifically with Earthly, I mean, it started as a project, like I mentioned, but I realized that there was a big gap in the fashion industry with diversity and representation, and also sustainability. And there are a lot of companies that do one or the other really well. Like, some companies do diversity and inclusion really well, and some do sustainability well, but there aren't that many that do both well together. So I had all this research and all of this, I guess, experience making a fake campaign for my thesis. So when I was stuck at home after graduation, I saw an opportunity to actually make a real difference. And the basis of Earthly is mostly using donated items from other people to make the clothing, to keep more clothing out of landfills, because fast fashion is a huge problem. And I think because there is that lack of a company that really, I guess, there are a lot of fashion brands that are very performative brands with activism, and they don't really follow through with what they are specifically talking about, or like the cultures that they like to use in their brands, but they don't follow through with actually helping out those communities. So I wanted to fill that gap and kind of use my prior skills with my like side hustle, I guess, and try and make a real brand that can actually follow through and like help out different communities, donate a portion of each of the collection's proceeds to environmental and social justice organizations, while also saving clothing from ending up in landfills.
Awesome, thank you. And then Carrie.
Great. So I never considered myself an entrepreneur or even a business person. I always had a lot of ideas and I was always very curious, but I was kind of against business. I saw business as kind of an evil, greedy, selfish force that I wanted nothing to do with. So then I went into law, which, some people see law as like that, but I saw a lot of opportunity to help people in law. But then I started to realize, in being a lawyer and working with all of these companies, and also seeing, the rise of some sustainable brands and ethical brands, how much power business did have. I mean, if you can employ and change the conditions of 100,000 people all around the globe or more for some of these companies, like that's really huge. So that's when I became more interested in business as a force for good. And then seeing, how business can give opportunities to people. Thinking about like, if you need, in terms of elements of life, you need healthcare first, I think you need to be healthy. Then you need education, you need to learn things. Then you need to do something with your life once you're educated. So I really saw business as a third step. And that's what got me more interested in becoming an entrepreneur later in life.
Awesome. And then this is kind of a related question, and you've touched on it a little bit already, some of you, but what part of your background helped you in your entrepreneurial journey? Was it business school or was it a more untraditional route, something else, like somewhere you worked? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it was more traditional. I wouldn't say traditional. Definitely not business school, because I did not go to business school. I do wish I had, because there were times when I feel that I could have used some of the learning from the business side. It would take me a while to understand it and learn it. One thing that really helped me was just not wanting to give up and having the confidence in me that I can keep doing it. So I think that helped me. And what has helped me is having the experience from being with different companies, like being with larger corporations, being with smaller corporations, and then eventually coming down to startups. And I think that's what has really helped me.
I'd say for me, just to go back to my education, because I know you asked about business school. I did not go to business school. I minored in business administration, but I went to architecture school at Temple.
About 50 different underwriters sitting in those boxes. Each of them put down.
I think someone accidentally has unmuted themselves. If you could mute yourselves, please.
I'm gonna try muting them.
Okay, thanks, Aman. You can keep going. Thank you, guys.
You can go. I don't know who's talking. Again, back to hard work and, being in that major. My major was really small. I ended up graduating like 22 people. So not the educational part of it, but more of the social part of it was really interesting. I know a lot of my friends who I went to college with, like their majors were really large. You did find friends, but I was almost forced to really get to know a lot of these people and learn about these people who I would never interact with, not intentionally, but growing up, we all grew up in the same area around the same people. We went to high school with like 1,000 people. So it was hard in our grade. So it was like hard to really get to know some people. And I really got to know all of my classmates. I learned about a lot of different personalities, how to deal with them. We were in class together for 5 years in every single class, different religions, different cultures. So it was really cool. And that stuff transitions even now with working in the events world and stuff. I feel like I can work with, and I know a lot about all these different cultures and different personalities and stuff. So that was a good transition. And then Just with the work aspect of working at a sign company for a lot of years, now we do a lot of design and production. So I can utilize so many of those resources now, and really understand like how we're fabricating this, how we're producing it, and how it's being done. It helps with logistics and those types of things. So that was, something that helped me.
I would say, I mean, even though I didn't, my job currently, what we're doing is not what I went to school for. I still use things that I learned in college, and
Your timelines.
and my timelines for weddings are basically a call sheet from when I was in pre-production. So they have the whole run of show, the time things are happening, what the action is, what time that ends, who is responsible for it. And it's a detailed timeline for the day that reminds me of when I would be on set and I would have to have call sheets for the shoots that we were doing, and all of the pre-production that I did for those things. And even just like when I interned at Viacom in New York, and even just from that, like I learned so many things about like being on set and having to deal with things changing sometimes and just rolling with it and pivoting, going, making a split decision because you have to. So I still utilize what I learned in school and what I learned in my internships. And then also working during school, like we said, we always had at least one job, sometimes two. And most of the time, those jobs for me were in restaurants. So having that balance of knowing I have to get my papers done, my research done, and all of those things, having that, and then also paying for my apartment and my living expenses, having that balance too from being in college and working is also helpful as an adult. Also, some people, you have to make sacrifices, and you're not, if you want to be an entrepreneur, binge watching a TV show or going out all the time, you could be I'm not saying don't go out and don't have fun, but you have to know that balance. And I think my major, there were a lot of late nights editing and things like that. So I'm used to working late. I'm used to knowing my schedule and what works best for me. But like, if you're doing all these things that are fun, you're not working on your business, and you can't be upset when things don't work out for you. And I think that also stems from, Temple, being in Temple. So, and everyone's working in a restaurant at once in their life to just know. I just think that is a rule of thumb, just for future reference.
Gives you a lot of life skills.
Yes. Multitasking, dealing with the public, dealing with different personalities. It's just, even if you do it for a couple months, just do it.
Awesome. Thank you. I agree. Working in a restaurant is definitely a unique experience. That's good to have. Jordan, do you want to go ahead and tell us about your experience in school and how that led into your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. So I studied English and advertising while I was at Penn State, and then I have a background in marketing, digital marketing, and social media. So I don't really have the experience on like the business side or like the finance kind of side. I still could go to business school, which I might do at some point. But I think for me, my personality and like a lot of what I was involved with at Penn State allowed me to kind of explore that creative side of me. So I mentioned doing a lot of stuff involved with photography, and because of my background in marketing and social media, I've done a lot of website design and content creation and that kind of stuff. So I think it all, at least for me, running a fashion brand, I think it's really helpful to be interested in fashion and like being able to come up with ideas myself. So a lot of my experience and like involves me doing that with website design and content creation. I'm like coming up with these ideas on my own and trying to code things and like figure out graphics and like digital design. So I think even though I don't necessarily have the finance side and I'm not as like math oriented, because of that creative piece, it kind of branches out into every aspect of my business, which has been really helpful.
Thank you. And then Carrie?
Yeah, so I guess two things. One, being a lawyer, it really helps you find information. So like, you don't really know everything as a lawyer, but you know where to look. You do a lot of research, you call people. So I think that type of not being intimidated by, I don't know the answer to this, but having like experience, like finding lots of answers is really helpful. And then for me, you know, trying to do business in African countries, really four particularly, and then making sure you have that like genuine connection to people. So I first was teaching there in 2005, and I started my business in 2015. So I really had like 10 years of friendships and connections and understanding. Not that I still didn't make mistakes or, you know, make wrong assumptions, but at least I had that history there and I had people I could ask for opinions who I really trusted. So having those trusted partners was really important for me.
Awesome, thank you. Were there any hardships that you faced as a woman entrepreneur based on your gender? And was there anything that you found specifically beneficial or positive about being a woman entrepreneur?
Oh boy. Yes and no. No, there have been times where I know that there have been challenges, but mostly I think there has been a lot of respect, especially when they know that you are working hard and you're producing results. So they will listen to you. There is still, unfortunately, the culture where I want to say it, you know, in a nice way. There's still that bro culture. You know, they like to go hang out at the end of the day and maybe come back and work. And I think this was a corporate culture, but also startup culture was very much there that I had to deal with. And, you know, I am a mom of two kids, you know, and one is an older one in college, but I also have a 7-year-old who was a baby at that time. So, you know, I would go in the morning, make sure the baby is fed, I'm going in, and then I work nonstop. And I would have a coffee or maybe a quick sandwich that I would bring in myself and would just work through the day, where I would have my men colleagues who would go out for 2-hour lunches. And it's because they could come back and finish up the work until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So I do think there were those challenges, but then, you know, us women, we're very good with time management. So we would manage the time where we're able to get the work done, socialize a little bit, but at the same time, come back to your baby, come back to the house. I have worked with the government, and you already know the government is still very male dominated industry. And so it's startup now. I do see more women coming in. I love that. But you know, when I was working for this startup, it was a technology that we had to deal with roads. So I would go to these conferences and I would have to present. And when I would present, these would be the city managers, the director of public works, you know, the CEOs of construction companies that would come in, and there would be 800 people who I'm presenting to, but I could literally count the women heads, and there would be 15 or maybe 18 of them. So that really bothered me. So I did join a couple of organizations that were helping, you know, women in construction, women in the governments, women in startups. So I was in some of the panels like that. So there's definitely an awareness that we need to make. And but at the same time, we are so resilient. We know how to manage ourselves. We know how to manage other people. We are team players. We can do it. So, you know, there are challenges, but, you know, there's no challenge that we can't overcome.
Thank you. Awesome. Lovehouse, do you want to go ahead?
I mean, I kind of feel like our answer is similar. I at least, you know, I don't feel like there's been that many hardships being a woman in our industry. But on the same end, like we're really strong women. We have really strong personalities. Often people are like, oh, I thought you were taller, even when they've been around us for a while.
We're 5'2".
And yeah, she's 5'2", and that's like, she's taller than me. So we're coming in a little, like, we're coming hot with our personalities. Yes.
You have to.
So, you know, I feel like we always stand our ground. There's two of us a lot, especially when it comes in our business. So like sometimes like I'll be the bad guy. We have the balance of the good guy. She's the bad guy. I can be the good guy. We like balance that out. If there are things like, I know, like it always bothered us. We had one client whose grandfather was like, you girls. Like it just felt like he was talking to us. Hey girls, we're like, yes, we're women and this is our business. So if you would like to address us by name, I'm Andrea, this is Laura.
Happens a
Like,
lot with the
but it's like the older grandfather and stuff. But as far as like a hardship, I wouldn't say no. I don't think he was like intentionally trying to be insulting or anything, but we have a good way of being like, we're here. This is who we are. We do a really good job. We know we're really good at our job. And not to be cocky, but like, that's why we're entrepreneurs. That's why all of us are entrepreneurs. We're good at what we do.
You know your worth.
Exactly. And we don't need, you know, people are aware of that. So most of the time when people are aware of that and you know that for yourself, they're going to respect you, male or female. So
yeah, I think we kind of exude, we are big personalities and we kind of exude that even, you know, in other jobs we've had where it's like, you're not going to do that to me. And that's that. But like, oh God, working in restaurants in the city my previous job was event planner for a restaurant group before I started out on my own. And all of the people above me and the director of operations and things like that, you know, like we've said, they went out together after, and I would be working, or I would be the one working on something, or I would show up first in the meeting and they would all be 15 minutes late because they got coffee or something together. And like, or I would mention ideas for things. And when I mentioned them, it wasn't physically possible this quarter, but then my chef would mention it months later. And that was such a good idea. And I would say, oh, I said that in our last meeting. We took notes. I said that. So I think advocating for yourself too is always.
I always say advocate for yourself. I mean, up to recently, like I found out like out of my like job that I was at, like the other company, I was the highest paid person in our department. I was the only woman because I would literally go in there and be like, I need a raise, or I quit tomorrow. And I know that it's like, so just being a woman, like, I think you have to not allow there to be hardships. Like, so like Laura said, like, you know your worth, you know your value, like go in there and they'll respect it. And if they don't, then you move on.
Thank you. That's really powerful. That's great advice. Jordan, do you want to go ahead?
I feel like I agree with all of that. I also feel like I could take this answer in a few different directions. Earthly, for me, I basically just started it. So it's been kind of in existence since June. So I haven't had, I guess, a lot of opportunities to interact with a bunch of people and like make connections with people outside of necessarily like the sustainability and like the fashion world. So I feel like the people who I've communicated with and a lot of people in the sustainability realm are women. So it makes it, I guess, a little bit easier to relate to Earthly and to me and to other sustainability influencers and people in that industry, because it is very like woman dominated, which I think is amazing. But I think I'm trying to think of like examples of if I've ever really received, I guess, backlash. And it's not because I'm a woman running a business. I feel like from relatives and people around me, if they've kind of criticized what I'm doing, it's more for like, I guess, the fact that I'm like caring about the environment, which still is weird to a lot of people, I guess. So I've had like family members, I think they think it's a little bit like woo-woo that I'm like trying to make sustainable fashion and like save the planet when it's something like that important to me. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's because I'm a woman. I think it's just because they don't understand that it's like actually an important thing. But yeah, I guess even in other jobs that I've had, like I worked at a bicycle shop while I was at Penn State, and I was the marketing intern, and it was me and one female mechanic, and then everybody else were men. And I was actually, I think, pleasantly surprised by how respected my opinion and my skills were. So I really haven't faced as many hardships.
That's amazing. Thank you, Jordan. And then Carrie.
Great. Also coming from law, very male dominated, especially at the top, a good number of like female associates. Academia is a lot more mixed. And as a business person, I also don't think I've faced too many challenges, probably because I was used to that environment and kind of got like thick skin a little bit. Sometimes I don't think that people should try to ignore things that happen. I also feel like sometimes in life you're faced with a choice of, do I get really upset about it and let it ruin my day, or I just try to like forget about it and move on. So I think, that's a personal choice. And sometimes I've been more on the like, this is annoying, or I'll say something rude back or something, so I think it's a personal choice about how you want to handle some things. And I haven't really faced any major discrimination. Like, I think there's been, I would say like low grade sexual harassment sometimes. But again, not to the point where I felt like I couldn't stand up for myself. And again, in business, I don't think there's been like really discrimination or anything like that. I think probably more it's been like self-imposed, women are sometimes socialized not to ask for help or not to, ask for things that they need. And so I think that I have a little bit of that. So just train yourself to ask and build up that confidence that you need to run a business is important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This question is one of my favorite ones that we have today. What is the best advice you've ever been given? And what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
Okay, so before I talk about that, I do want to point out that in this group right now, there are also male students, entrepreneurs. And the fact that they're here and listening to this conversation tells me that they're already being very respectful of the woman in entrepreneurship. And so thank you, first of all, for being here, guys. Because you're here, the message to you're probably going to be a future CEO. You probably are going to have your own company. You already have one. Just remember, from a woman's point of view, of how she is going to feel, in being in your company. You have to make sure the culture is there for the woman as well. It's not specifically towards the male. Just make it community for all. So again, like, thank you for that. And advice to the women entrepreneurs is not even just the entrepreneurs, but all women, is stop having the imposter syndrome. I have had it. I have had it many, many times. And believe it or not, this is actually an advice coming from my husband, who has been in corporations and who has been in startups, and he knows me. And there have been times when I've been offered some very high level jobs, and I would say, this is a master in physics and a robotic scientist asking me to do this type of job, and I don't know if I'm good at it. And my husband would say, like, stop with the imposter syndrome. They know you, they're asking you to do it. That means that you can do it. And I have doubted myself, but then at the same time, I have realized that there is a reason why I'm being asked to do that, because they believe in what I can do. And the other one is, hard work pays off. You're going to have failures, be ready for them. You're going to make mistakes, especially when you're young. Make mistakes, have failures, and be okay with it, and then move on. But always have success as a focus, because at the end, you are going to succeed. It might not be this company, but it might be the other one, because you are going to know the mistakes that you had made in the previous one. So just keep going, have a mentor to teach you and guide you, learn and ask so many questions, at the end, you're all entrepreneurs. Just don't get a burnout. Watch yourself for a burnout, because the last thing you want to do is not being able to sleep or eat and then get sick and not able to follow what you believe in or what your goals are.
Thank you so much. Love House, if you want to go ahead.
I agree with so many things that Annie just said. Like, we were literally like, yeah, the burnout thing is key. Know when you're getting tired. I literally a couple months ago, I was like saying how my body was just like rejecting me. I could not, usually I get a cold and it's gone in 24 hours. It lasted for like 4 weeks, and it was not COVID. It was just like this like never ending cold. But my own personal advice, I had the first firm that I worked at, my boss there, it was just him and I finally, was moving on to my next job. And I remember when I was leaving, I was like all nervous and upset. I had gotten to know his family. I worked from his home. So I just felt like I was letting him down by quitting and going to a better job. And I was like, I'm so sorry, Michael. And he's like, why do you keep saying you're sorry that you're leaving? He was like, don't ever work for anybody or with anybody who doesn't want better for you and doesn't think that you're better. He was like, you have no growth here. This is it. It's just me at home. You deserve better than this. So move on. I'll find another intern and they'll move on too. And he was like, but please do me a favor and never work for anybody or with anybody who doesn't think that you're better than that. Because, then you just stop here. And I feel like I've carried that throughout with me, even when working with clients or this and that,
We just said it to our new hires. We just hired people and we said that to them. We said, if you have a side project that you're working on, some of them want to be more design focused, one wanted to get into rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, you can do that. And you can ask us our opinion. You can ask us for help. We'll help you as much as you want. And we support you, but we'll never work for us forever and be miserable. So
No, my
not
last
that working for us is miserable. It's really fun.
My last boss that I worked for 10 years, he helped start Love House. He would look at my work and be like, this is awesome. There was nowhere else for me to go in that company. I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur and do my own thing. And, when we did stuff on the weekend, I'd be like, oh, look what we're working on this. I never felt like I couldn't show him. And I know that that's weird, but I was always like, that's part of the reason that I continue to stay here. I have that support system with him. So yeah, she had the opposite experience at work, and it was so toxic and it was horrible to watch, because I'm in the background, I'm like, you're better than this. You don't need to deal with that. So, that advice is just carried with me, and I'm 35 now. And that was when I was 24 years old.
I would say if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, definitely get yourself a good group of people who are in a similar situation as you, just starting out. So you have people to bounce ideas off of. And then, like Annie said, get a mentor. So have people above you who have been through it, and get advice from them too. So you know what not to do. You learn a lot of things of what not to do. And then we also have a really good group of other female entrepreneurs that we have group chats with, and we have Zoom happy hours with right now, to ask them what to do, especially during this time with weddings when everything is up in the air. So asking questions is your best asset, is just ask questions. Right now we live in a world where everything is so instant. I am on TikTok sending Andrea things all the time. They say we should be investing in this, we should be doing this. There's so much information out there that you can find. So just get all the information you can and ask a lot of questions.
Thank you. That's awesome. Jordan, do you want to go?
Okay, so I agree with everything that was just said. But so personally, I think some of the best advice that I've received, I am definitely one of those people that are prone to burnouts and like being overwhelmed and getting like anxious about things that don't really matter. So I like to joke about, like, since it's just me running this business, I'm the one who sets the deadlines for myself, and I like make the collection dates, like I decide all of that stuff, and then I get anxious about the dates that I set. So I think one of the things that I've like learned is not to really get as much in my head about it, and realize that like you do have the flexibility to make changes, and if you have like the right customer base, they'll be understanding of the fact that you are a real person and you have limits. But I also think even if you're burnt out, sometimes what can happen is you start to enjoy, or you start to enjoy what you're doing less. So I think reminding yourself that there's a reason that you chose to do this and that it is something you're passionate about, even though in those low moments it seems like it's awful and you're miserable. You're not like, you're doing it for a reason, because you do actually like, I love what I'm doing. So I think reminding yourself of your priorities and why you chose to do what you did is really important. I also think advice that I would give people, like I said, I don't have the business background. I have the creativity piece, but I think you don't need the exact background in what you're doing to succeed and to actually like get somewhere and do what you want to do. So I think being really motivated and just having that passion and drive for what you're doing is really important. And that can get you pretty much anywhere. There are people who you can talk to teach you what you don't know, and you can learn new things and teach yourself things. So you don't have to know everything when you start out. You don't even have to know everything like years down the line, because there's always new stuff for you to learn. So I think remembering that you can do whatever you set your mind to, and you can be successful, whatever your definition of success is, whether it's making money or just being content with what you're doing and feeling like you're making a difference. I think that's really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Carrie.
Great. It wasn't necessarily advice, but I think there's a group in Philadelphia called the Alliance for Women Entrepreneurs. It's more for like larger businesses. I don't know, maybe some of the people here are members, but for the students, it's more for like larger businesses run by women, how to scale businesses. But someone was giving a talk that, I guess it was some research she had read or something, that what separates successful from not successful entrepreneurs is persistence, meaning just keep trying and keep going, right? So even if you have roadblocks, just keep moving forward. So I thought that seemed very doable, right? I don't have to have all these skills or be this certain type of person. I just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and trying different things and moving forward. And I think that that's something we can all do, right? If we're really committed to it, just keep going. So that was good advice that kind of made it feel like, well, I can do that. And then my advice for you would be, it seems like there's a lot of pressure sometimes when you're young. You start a business now, I'm, Jordan, awesome, you're 22. I don't want people to compare themselves to you though. And I don't want people to compare themselves to, other college students or people they see on Shark Tank. They're like 13 years old that have businesses, right? So you have time. And so I wanted to tell you have time, with meaning, assuming you live normal life expectancy, 60, 70 years old, you literally have all that time to create the business or the life that you want. So don't feel like you need to do it immediately. And I would say timing is important. So for example, if you do want to have a family or take time out first, or take care of your parents, or if you have other obligations, it will be more difficult to fully commit to a business during those periods, or go to graduate school or something. So you have time, and just think about in your life, when may you want to do certain things. You're not going to be able to plan it out exactly. Sometimes things happen, but don't rush yourself, and also think about when would be the best time to potentially start a business for you.
Thank you so much. All right, we are going to put up the suitable code for any student who is in Fox that needs to scan it. And as Caroline puts that suitable code up, it's okay if you have to filter out and get to class, but we are going to ask our panelists one question from the chat, and then if people have questions that they want to say out loud, they can. In the chat earlier, we got a question asking how much was the initial investment for each company and how did you go about raising capital? I don't know if anyone just wants to jump out. You don't all have to answer if anyone has something specific that they.
Well, you know, for my company, I don't need an investment. I am, you know, kind of not even have to bootstrap. It's consulting service. Now with robotics and some other projects, especially Robotic, which is the AI company, there was a seed round, and we had the seed round for about $1 million. And then we had, sorry, that was a pre-seed round and then a seed round. And then the A round was more about, I believe, 13 million. So how do we go about getting it? That was my CEO. So I wasn't really responsible for raising the funds, but I did help them get to raise the funds because I was able to produce the results that the investors were looking for. So if you see, the investors are looking for an upward trajectory. They're looking for customers. They're looking for beta customers. They're looking for the pipeline, what you have in the pipeline. And according to that, they will invest. So I think I can actually let the other panelists talk because it's not truly really relevant to me because my CEO was doing it.
It's not that relevant to us either, because our answer is similar. Both Laura and I decided early on when we came together, like there will be, unless somebody was investing, which we didn't really need it. We were the skill. We were giving our skill and our knowledge. So as we got clients organically, we created our own funds, and that's what we reinvested back into our company. We create our own buckets of money of what gets invested back in. Sometimes it's on advertising. Sometimes it's on a trip for us because that's balanced. Sometimes it's on equipment that we need, but we have never had any sort of investments besides the money that comes in, or really did anything on credit. We don't want debt ever.
Well, I will say this though, get a business credit card that has cash back, because for us, we're buying, so with event design and production, we're buying things to build your items for your event. So we put everything on that credit card to get a cash back, or if you want miles, if that's your thing, that's fine. We didn't think that was smart right now because no one's going anywhere. But so we did that, and then we did put things on, but we have it set to pay directly from the bank account so that there's no debt overflow. But we basically use that to buy the things that we needed to produce the items for events.
So somebody else is paying for it.
So someone else is paying for it. It's not us putting that out of pocket, but if you can get one of those business credit cards and just use them for your purchases for the business, you put things on there like your tolls to drive to site visits and, you know, things like that, meetings, etc. That's what we do. That worked for us. That may not work for you. But we wanted to make sure we had everything. So when we had an accountant, they could look at everything on that one card. Also, we didn't buy office space. So we did everything. We were meeting people at coffee shops around the city for their first meetings or at their venue. We're at a venue right now. We're at the Union League. We've been here for 2 hours for a walkthrough. And then we just did this meeting in here. So we didn't feel that we needed that office space because that would have been $1,000 expenditure every month for something that we didn't feel was necessary. So you don't, depending on what you want to do, for us, we didn't need that capital to start it up. We just looked at other things to do, I guess.
Awesome. If anyone else wants to answer, I'm definitely going to let them, but I'm also going to say that people are going to start filtering out because a lot of people have classes at 1 o'clock. And before everyone goes, I was just wondering if any of the speakers want to put any sort of website or social media handles in the chat for our members to be able to get in touch with them. Now would be an awesome time to do that before everyone filters out. But sorry, I think I heard someone start talking maybe before I started talking. So yeah, Jordan, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm putting my Instagram handle in. But so I am kind of in the same boat. So I almost feel like when I finally expand, kind of, you can check back with me and I'll see if I have a different answer. But since it is just me right now, and I kind of set up Earthly to bring in donated items and materials, I kind of did that on purpose because I knew that it was going to be difficult for me to like a lot of big sustainable brands will make their own materials. I knew that wasn't possible for me. So using secondhand materials and donated items is like really helpful because I don't have to pay for any of that. I pay for like thread and elastic and like smaller sewing materials, but I don't really need a lot of other resources right now. So for me, where I am as just like a one-woman business, I think not needing the capital is really helpful, and it's not necessary, but I do eventually want to expand to be able to like produce more items and reach more people. So I think at that point, because I'm going to need employees, that's when I will definitely need capital. So I will probably have a different answer in a few years.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I saw that Carrie responded in the chat. So if anyone wants to check there, they can. I know we're just about running out of time here, but if anyone wants to ask one more quick question, then I think that we could hear from at least 1 or 2 of our speakers, and then we'll have to wrap it up at 1 o'clock.
Right.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to put the Zoom code back up. I know somebody missed it, so I'll put that back up, but I just want to thank all our speakers so much for coming. I loved hearing your answers and your advice. It was such a great meeting. Thank you all.